It was just a black cat, but in the Middle Ages, that was enough to seal a woman's fate. It didn't matter if the feline followed you for food or liked the sound of your voice. If it chose you as its companion, the neighbors were already whispering that you were part of the circle of shadows. Black cats were seen as demonic familiars, one of the most sinister expressions of the medieval imagination. Within the distorted logic of Europe's dark history, the mere presence of a black cat at your window was the ticket to an accusation. And of course, when the trial began, no one remembered that you just wanted someone to meow with you in the silence of the night. And the worst was the combo: being a woman, living alone, and having a black cat. Congratulations! You just lit the neighborhood's bonfire. Among the many bizarre medieval beliefs, this was one of the cruelest because it completely ignored the affection and loneliness of someone just seeking companionship. It wasn't about real evidence. It was about medieval superstitions gaining strength in corridors where light was scarce and fear was abundant. And get this, if someone tripped after your cat crossed their path, that was it. You became a threat to the medieval justice system, and you didn't even get a chance to explain. And that was just the beginning, because sometimes it wasn't even about what you did, but who you married. Marrying the wrong man could literally be a death sentence. Marriage, which today is seen as a personal choice, was, in the world of medieval witchcraft, a trap disguised as an altar. A jealous, greedy, or simply cruel husband could fabricate an accusation, and the judges, guided by ancient superstitions, were all too eager to accept it. It didn't matter if it was a lie. A sideways glance or a headache after an argument was enough. In a few days, there you were in the dock, accused of witchcraft, surrounded by people who barely knew your name, but were already certain you deserved to be burned as a witch. And the most macabre part? No one needed to prove anything. The so-called real witch tests were based on absurdities like sudden sneezes, disturbing dreams, or even wine stains on the tavern floor. The whole system was manipulated by the warped logic of the medieval justice system, where fear shaped the laws and truth was molded by whoever shouted the loudest. Many husbands discovered it was easier to accuse than to ask for a divorce. And when the flames rose, they burned away any chance of female freedom in a society ruled by insane medieval laws. And this unfortunately didn't even require a marital dispute. Sometimes all it took was talking to yourself. Talking to yourself today might be a sign of creativity or just a moment of distraction. But in the era of dark medieval history, it was treated as one of the signs of a witch. Imagine a woman muttering about where she left the bread, praying softly for someone sick, or just reciting an herbal recipe. To others, that was a secret ritual, a malign invocation. It was the kind of behavior that, combined with a black cat or a melancholic expression, turned into evidence in court. And worse, if she was holding a mirror or a candle while talking, that was it. The accusations came in full force, as if she had opened the portal to hell itself. The curious thing is that many of these behaviors stem from trying to cope with loneliness. Elderly women, widows, or simply those who were different, who found themselves without children or husbands, ended up talking to plants, animals, or themselves, and that was enough to get them labeled. What was just a personal outburst became proof of sorcery. These episodes became part of what we now understand as creepy historical facts, revealing much about the fragility of laws and empathy in that era. And if besides talking to yourself, this woman had a mirror, then things got much worse. Owning a mirror. Having a mirror at home during the grim times of the Dark Ages horror was almost as dangerous as owning a grimoire. In the view of bizarre medieval beliefs, mirrors weren't just objects of vanity, they were windows between worlds. It was said they could trap souls, reflect a witch's true face, or even summon demons if used the wrong way. And yes, using two mirrors facing each other was basically begging to be dragged to hell, a malign vortex, a spiritual black hole. And if you broke a mirror, goodbye luck, goodbye reputation. Welcome to the list of the next accused in the village's witch trial. It wasn't uncommon to cover mirrors during storms out of fear they'd attract lightning. People believed the glass could channel occult forces. And of course, if a woman's house was simple but had a mirror inside, the village's eyes would widen. How did she get that, they'd ask. The answer always fell back on medieval witchcraft. Even without proof, it was strange enough to fuel gossip and stoke the embers of suspicion. It was the kind of superstition that bypassed common sense and dove straight into the logic of the medieval justice system. And it only got worse if the mirror's owner was an older woman, single, and living alone. In the insane logic of insane medieval laws, a woman over 40 living alone was practically a natural candidate for the stake. If she wasn't a wife or a mother, she was useless to the social structure, or worse, dangerous. The mere act of existing outside the expected mold was already a risk, and if she knew how to heal wounds with herbs, make calming teas, or when to harvest the right plants, that became direct proof she was part of medieval witchcraft. Knowledge that would be respected today was treated back then as a demonic pact, and all it took was a sick animal, a child falling down the stairs, or a failed harvest for fingers to point. It was her. It was always her. This pattern repeated in hundreds of trials built what we now call the real history of witch hunts, a succession of injustices masked as faith and justice. The truth? It was fear. Fear of what wasn't understood. Fear of the woman who didn't need anyone. And ironically, many of these women survived when everyone around them died, which, guess what, was even more suspicious. Surviving when others died. In the Middle Ages, surviving could be a curse. If the plague ravaged the village and you stayed healthy, the whispers began. If your childbirth was smooth while others ended in tragedy, they said something dark was protecting you. And if your crops flourished while your neighbors withered, done. Deal with the devil. It was the ultimate distortion of the medieval justice system. Success, health, and even personal hygiene became proof of witchcraft. It didn't matter if you washed your hands, used vinegar, or prayed more. You were different, therefore dangerous. This thinking echoed the chronic fear of the time, fueled by ancient superstitions and the constant search for scapegoats. And so women who were just careful or better prepared became symbols of evil. How does she know that, they'd ask? The answer was never intelligence, but sorcery. And when the court had to choose between understanding or burning, it chose the flames. This shows how the real history of witch hunt wasn't about justice, but about control. And even if you explained yourself, there was still a test, a truth ritual, a final proof. And that, my friend, involved water. Floating in water. Imagine being thrown into a river with your hands and feet tied and still having to hope you'd sink. That was the level of madness of the real witch test in medieval Europe. If you sank, you were innocent. If you floated, you were a witch. A logic as warped as the bizarre medieval beliefs that created it. This method, called the water test, turned every execution into a public spectacle. People gathered as if it were a festival, eager to see if the body sank or not. It was the justice of fear, ignorance, and macabre entertainment, one of the cruelest forms of dark history. And don't think it was rare. The use of this test was common in villages where the medieval justice system served more to fuel panic than to promote any kind of truth. There was even a manual. Tie this way, release there. Watch for floating. The water, they said, rejected the bodies of witches. And the irony? In many cases, those who floated did so because of air trapped in their clothes or their body's anatomy. Nothing supernatural, just science that didn't yet exist. But if the body rose, it was the end, especially if that woman had a mole in the wrong place. Having an unusual appearance. All it took was a mole, a wart, or too many freckles to land you straight on the suspect list. In the imagination of medieval witchcraft, the female body was meticulously scrutinized for any sign of the devil. Had a birthmark? It was a witch's teat. Red hair? Genetic curse. Left-handed? Born crooked. The trial didn't need coherence, just fear. People believed demons literally fed on the skin of these women, and any bump, any different mark became suspicious. Appearance, more than any behavior, was used as justification for brutal punishments. And there was no point in trying to hide it. If you covered the mark with makeup, it got worse. After all, why hide something if you weren't guilty? That was the warped logic that fueled the medieval justice system. The search for signs of a witch wasn't just symbolic, it was physical, invasive, and often humiliating. Women were examined naked by groups of inquisitors looking for any visual proof. And even when they found nothing, a rumor was enough. And if on top of that, you had dreams and they happened to come true, dreaming for many has always been a way to process the world. But in the context of dark medieval history, dreams were too dangerous. If you said you dreamed of your neighbor's horse dying and it actually died days later, that was it. Not a coincidence, but a curse, witchcraft. Intuition, so valued today, was seen as a direct sign of demonic influence. It was as if any premonition, even a subtle one, revealed a secret pact with invisible forces. And of course, popular fear fueled everything. She knew beforehand, she made it happen. Logic? None. But in court, that was enough. These associations between dreams and catastrophes became central pieces in witch trials, especially in the most superstitious villages. They said the devil whispered nightly spoilers into witches' ears. And worse, no one needed to see anything. Just hearing about it was enough to get you dragged to the square. Women with the gift of perception became victims of their own talent. And even while sleeping, there was no rest, because if someone dreamed of you, even if you didn't dream anything, the danger was at your door, literally.
Appearing in someone else's dream. In the insanity of witch trials, you didn't even need to do anything. Just appearing in someone's dream was enough. I saw her flying on a broomstick. She offered me a potion in the dream. These claims, even from children, became evidence. The court didn't need witnesses or logic, just collective fear. It was believed that dreams revealed spiritual truth, and if you appeared in them doing something strange, it was because your soul was already entangled with evil forces. This kind of symbolic judgment turned imagination into his sentence, and subjectivity became a deadly weapon. Often, a single person's account was enough to start an entire process, and that included delusions, nightmares, and even hallucinations. Imagine the impact of this in an era dominated by medieval superstitions, where what was dreamed at night shaped someone's fate at dawn. The medieval justice system didn't question the origin of dreams, it just acted on them. And this was one of the most terrifying facets of what led thousands to be burned as a witch. After all, if even sleeping wasn't safe, what was left? Now that you know what was enough to be called a witch, stop and think, how many of these things have you done just today? Owning a cat, living alone, talking to yourself, having premonitions. If you'd been born 600 years ago, you'd be in the middle of the square, with the firewood crackling under your feet. And this isn't just ancient history. The logic of judging before understanding, of fearing what's different, still lives among us. Camouflaged, silent, but alive. Have we really changed that much? The truth is that studying this dark history isn't just curious, it's urgent. Because as long as we don't understand what led an entire society to justify so many atrocities based on ancient superstitions and absurd tests, we risk repeating it all in other forms. And you, what would have condemned you in the Middle Ages? Which of these accusations would have been your sentence? Comment below. Let's talk. And if this video woke you up, if it taught you something no one ever told you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and come with us to explore more of these secrets from the past that still burn in the present.